All right. So thank you everyone for being here today. My name is Rayner, and I'll be bringing you through a quick review of digital research methods and how they have been implemented in HIV and co-infections research. So I think maybe the word review might be too broad and too systematic, but what I would do is because there are so many ways of using digital methods for doing research, I'll focus on three main areas that have been very pertinent to AIDS and co-infections research. These involve content generation, participant recruitment, and implementation. So I'll bring you some interesting examples and innovations in these three areas. So my colleagues, Joe and Tan, who are here with me in this particular capacity building session, they've done a lot of work in terms of crowdsourcing and engagement of participants to really generate content. And when I talk about generating content here, it's really generating content for evaluation work and for health promotion efforts. You will see from their own publications that they actually engage participants to come up with new posters, content for HIV prevention and so on, and they use this subsequently to as a ways of improving health outcomes for at-risk populations. Apart from generating content for evaluative work or trial studies, you can also talk about generating content in a qualitative way. So when we do qualitative research, we often talk about generating content as our form of data collection. And apart from doing Zoom-based or teleconferencing-based types of in-depth interviews and WhatsApp group discussions, not WhatsApp group discussions, but focus group discussions, we also have seen some really novel ways that are emerging in the past few years, such as the use of chat-based apps, such as WhatsApp, for focus group discussions. Some of these focus group discussions take place over several days because people can't type as fast as they talk in a particular focus group discussion. So you can see some of these interesting methodologies appearing to generate content for qualitative work. You can see over here some screenshots of some of the WhatsApp-based group discussions. People still are able to articulate in depth, what they think about certain topics, even though it's on a chat rather than in person. And you can see that people use emojis as well. So this is something interesting, and it raises questions on how to analyze emojis when it comes to emotions. Apart from that, some ways that have stood the test of time, a lot of people have been using internet forum discussions, for example, to generate content in terms of qualitative research. So these are some ways that, in spite of a pandemic, in spite of having to stay at home, a lot of researchers are still engaged in a lot of qualitative work through these digital means. So now I move on from content generation to participant recruitment. So there are two ways in which participant recruitment can happen. One way is through collaborations. And when I talk about collaborations, it's oftentimes with corporate stakeholders, with community groups, with influencers. And these are all entities that have a very strong digital presence. And you can actually tap on those networks to really recruit your participants online. Apart from collaborations, we also talk about advertisements. So it's sort of using similar networks, but this is with a paid and budgeted element. So for example, this is an example of one of my own research projects, which looks at HIV pre-exposure prophylaxis attitudes and knowledge among Singapore men who have sex with men. This was done through a collaboration with Grindr. So they actually allowed us to run some ads in collaboration with them in Singapore to recruit research participants. Apart from corporate entities that have a wide reach, you can also collaborate with community-based organizations in your own setting to really reach hidden populations, or what we might also call underserved populations who are at risk of HIV and other STI, for example. Beyond collaborations, actually now you can of course use a paid element to recruit participants. So in these kinds of examples, we come across new terms such as impressions, click-through rates, total clicks, total spend. And actually what all these things mean, for example, impressions mean the number of people who have seen your ad. Your click-through rate of 6.55%, what does it mean? It means that 6.55% of participants who have seen your ad actually clicked on the advertisement. And you can have sort of like a cascade of participation and engagement when it comes to advertisements. And these are very different from what we might actually traditionally see in terms of like response rates and things like that. And I think it's only just emerging, the kind of conversations in our published literature around what these mean and what is a good click-through rate versus a response rate. This is something that I ran, with a collaboration through a community-based organization. We ran some ads for a totally online randomized control trial. So we definitely saw success in terms of running these ads, but we also intentionally budgeted a good amount of money to run these ads online, based on the past experiences in terms of like, what is the typical click-through rate for this particular setting. We had to base it off all these different figures. And I think these would have some implications for your own grant applications when you're using digital methods for participant recruitment. So this is another example. So this is actually sort of like a video from a Hong Kong-based social media campaign where they created a 1-minute video and posted it on YouTube. It's based on a pun, a chrysanthemum tea. So it's actually encouraging men who have sex with men in Hong Kong to test. Just a little bit of a snippet to show you.
Hi,乜咁啱啊 ？Hi， 乜咁啱啊 ？Hey， 咁啱嘅。乜咁啱 ？Hi， 乜？
So that was a very short snippet. You can find the video on YouTube. What you see is that these are also ways of implementing interventions online, right? Hosting it online. You can actually see how different researchers in different settings have actually done evaluation studies based on these campaigns as well. For example, this one in Hong Kong, 6 months after the campaign, they were looking at how many people recruited through sex on premises venues were exposed to the campaign and what this exposure actually was associated with in terms of HIV testing behaviors. And lastly, for implementation, apart from hosting content, you can also really use these platforms to have interactive kinds of communication. So for example, if your intervention includes the use of internet popular opinion leaders, or maybe even community workers, places like Facebook groups, Google groups, all these platforms serve as a digital means for you to really engage participants and to implement your health promotion efforts as well. So I brought you through these 3 main areas for digital research methods. Of course, I would say that it's so much broader than this, and there's so much to be said about digital methods. We are only really hitting the tip of the iceberg. And I'm very excited that you're here today for us to share a little bit more after this in the breakout sessions.